Alright, everyone, it's your boy K Natsuki here, back at it again with another new spanking hot what if video. And today, I'm bringing to you, and today, tomorrow, or tonight, or whenever you're watching this, I'm bringing to you the first of 5 what if series that I quite literally have come up with out of boredom. And that isn't all. And those aren't all of the series I'm going to be making soon. So yeah, without any further ado, let's begin series number 1. What if Deku... What if Deku was chosen by a goddess? Now, for those who read my spoiler, you probably know what this what if contains. Those who have not, be prepared, is all I have to say. Let's get into this what if. Many years ago. Deku would have been born like any normal kid. However, there would be a strange effect to him. Unbeknownst to Deku, or his parents, Hisashi Midoriya would be the last of a dying bloodline, as the Midoriyas were actually the descendants of a very powerful race called the Oni. However, no Midoriya had ever been born with this power, so it was quickly forgotten, and with any powers of the Oni, so it was quickly forgotten. However, some Midoriya quirks relate into some of the powers of the Oni, as Hisashi's quirk was the rare and powerful ability of fire breathing, and to breathe fire out of his mouth, as the flame. Now, with Hisashi, he can only use it for regular flames at say, about 50 foot distances. Quite long and quite large, as Hisashi's quirk was not exactly the strongest, and Hisashi's power was only a mere replicant or remnant of the Oni's fire breathing, as they could breathe fire that was blue from their mouths, and some were even able to breathe black flames or white flames. But the most powerful type of flame would be black, white, and blue, a combination of them all, but not one singular color, but all 3 colors in individual parts of the flame. For that was the full power of the Oni's fire breath. As we go to Deku's birth. Now, the Oni existed over 100 and over 200 billion years ago. So no one on Earth would even know what they were like, as Hisashi's bloodline is so thin, and has been so thinned, that he's basically a normal human. However, from what seemed like a normal child. What should be a normal child. Gekko got the rare 1 in quintillion chance of being, 1 in decillion chance of being born, not as a human, but an Oni. Well, he would not directly look like an Oni at first. As Deku, he at first would look like a normal human with green hair and green eyes. As the Earth itself, as when Deku was born, however, his very soul, his very essence of his life force, would send a sort of aura around the Earth. This aura was all too familiar, and was all too familiar to a certain goddess. As she sensed Deku's demonic and almighty aura, as the goddess immediately knew that finally, the one she had been waiting for 100 billion years, and for over 100 billion years was finally born. As Deku would... Now, we skip to when Deku was 4. Deku had strange occurrences, abilities of sorts. His parents thought that he had some sort of almighty and all-powerful quirk. As when Deku was at the age of 4, and when Deku was at the age of 2, when his parents, and after feeding him milk out of a bottle, his parents tried to pat his back to make him burp, but instead of it being a normal child burp, he burped out a blue, black, and white flame. Just a tiny puff of blue, black, and white flame. This amazed Hazashi and his wife Inko. However, that would not be all. A month later, Deku would basically have been left with his father. Would basically have been left with his father while his mother was at work. As Deku's father, Hazashi, would go to the gym, as his quirk does not have a lot of muscle strength, so he wanted to test out his strength, and to build up more muscle and strength for combat. Hold on. What the? No, that is not a... Sorry about the dislike, but that is not a Transformer Mewtwo. That is female Unicron, you idiot. Gah. Imbeciles. Now, where was I? Ah, yes. So Hazashi would bring Deku with him to this gym, as he would be bench pressing 20 pounds. As Deku would have crawled out. Deku would have been extremely intelligent for his age, and would have walked right out of his seat, and out of his cradle. or I cannot remember what those things were called. I think they're called baskets or cradles. I can't remember. Anyways, he would walk out of the thing and would walk over to an entire weight machine. Now, this was made for people with extremely strong muscle or enhancer quirks, as it weighed 10,000 pounds. As Deku lifted it up with only one finger. As Hasashi was astounded, he thought his son had godly strength and had extremely enhanced strength and some sort of mysterious power of fire breathing and of his breath, as when Deku was at the age of 3, another strange occurrence would happen. Deku would have learned the ability of, Deku would have gained godly speeds, and would have flashed from one area of the room to another in less than a picosecond. Hold on.
It's getting dark.
As Gekko would have blitzed from one part of a 30-foot long room all the way to the other side of it in less than 1 picosecond, which a picosecond is a trillionth of a second. As at first, Hasashi thought that his son was getting different powers and had some sort of copying quirk that multiplied the power to infinite radiuses. However, because the reason of this was once Deku did one of these things, it would not happen again. As when we skipped when Deku was at the age of 4, his father would bring him to the quirk doctor, filled with excitement and optimism. And then the doctor would tell him the fated statement: "I'm sorry, but your son is quirkless." Hasashi would not understand. Quirkless? But how? Was all he could think of. How could his son, who did these unexplainable things, be quirkless? Hasashi would immediately then think, he can't be human. That isn't possible. As he eventually would think of Deku as a freak of nature, or even a demon. As soon, he and Inko would ridicule Deku by calling him a freak of nature. As when his father came clean about these unexplainable events to everyone he knew, who at first they thought him crazy, until Deku did another unexplainable feat. But this time, it was when Deku was asleep. As well, armor and a sort of robe or armor would instantly gather onto Deku. As this armor appeared to become a combination of a robe, a coat, and of a kimono. Some sort of fluffy coat or robe. And golden armor. Basically what you see Deku wearing right here. As Deku had no clue how he was doing this, as he knew that he was already deemed quirkless, as he had no clue how he was doing any of this. However, everyone knew, hold on, as when this happened, Gekko's father, and all of the people that his father knew, would instantly turn on Deku, as he would be shunned out of society, outcasted, called a freak, a monster, an unexplainable mistake, an error in the code of life. As we skip to when Deku was at the age of 14. And as we skip to 10 years, Deku is at the age of 14 as he is passing, as it's the last day of middle school. As Bakugo, a person who was once Izuku's best friend, now enemy, and now greatest bully, then say, and would yell at Deku at Izuku for wanting to be a hero. Still, after all that society had done to him, after all everyone thought of him, he wanted to be a hero. But Bakugo would not allow this to happen, as he and Hazashi and everyone else would say, a quirkless freak, a quirkless demonic freak can never be a hero. You're better off cutting your wrists and dying, or being some sort of low-tier villain. As they would all laugh at Deku. He would then leave. After Bakugo would tell him one thing which rang in his head the entire school day. Why don't you just take a swan dive off the roof and pray that you'll be born with a quirk in your next life? You freak? As Deku would take this to heart, he would get on top of the building as everyone all around the school gathered to see him jump. Not out of fear for Deku's life, but for excitement and happiness that the quirkless freak, the demon, would die. As Deku would jump off of the roof, falling. But instead of hearing a splat, we hear what sounded like a cushioned fall, as we see Deku had landed in some sort of dirt area. Perfectly fine, however, as there was vines covering him entirely, as he and everyone else would then think, who's doing this? As his classmates would be angry, and as everyone would then be angry and would say, did the freak do another? What the freak? Is this your doing? As Deku would then say, no. As there would be no one else near Deku. No one else with some sort of earth manipulation quirk and nature manipulation quirk, as they thought it was Deku. And suddenly the ground beneath Deku would begin to move around and swirl, as suddenly a circle of earth would rise up around Deku and would swirl around him, as suddenly Deku would have been dragged down underneath the ground. As everyone would be confused but would think that Deku was killed. However, he was not. As Deku would have been falling and would have basically been put in some sort of cage or capsule. As Deku would have been sliding down some sort of long tunnel and long underground tunnel. As we go to Deku 2 hours later. As the capsule of earth and rock that he is in falls on some sort of cushioned ground, as suddenly the rocks decombine, revealing Deku unharmed. As he then says, where am I? As Deku, of course, is expecting him to be underground with magma and lava. But instead, he sees a long sort of spiral hallway. And a long sort of spiraled cave. Now, what I mean by spiral, as Deku can see some sort of spiraled walls and ceiling and ground, and a giant spiral leading further away from Deku. Glowing in one is in a deep purple color. One part is in a deep purple color. Then the next is in a glowing, vibrant purple. As this spiral continues in the same two colors, in the same pattern, all the way down. As Deku decides to walk down the ginormous hallway, or the ginormous cavern, until he reaches what appears to be a giant purple, and a giant silver, black, and purple orb with a purple sort of sphere, with a glowing purple sort of essence leaking out through some cracks. As Deku would walk up to this giant sphere, as suddenly a part of the sphere would then begin rotating, revealing a door. Deku would walk in the door, and would then cautiously walk in through the door, confused of where on earth he was, or more accurately, where in earth he was. Now, unbeknownst to Deku, he is inside the core of the earth, and he is walking into the very heart of the core itself. As Deku would walk in and see a woman in the middle of this sphere, as there was many sort of cords and wires all around this giant sphere that Deku had walked inside. As he would then see a woman in gold, gray, and purple full armor with horns and, well, long hair. I'm just standing right there, eagerly tapping her fingers on what appeared to be a table or desk. As she would then turn around to see Deku, as she would say, so you're finally here. As she would then say, took you long enough. And here I thought 100 billion, and here I thought You'd been here in the first a billion years. Nope, it took you 100 billion, she would say, as the woman would have a eager and intentful looking face. As she would then say, do you have any idea how long I waited? I waited so long. I waited for 40 billion years, and then I waited another 60 billion, and then I waited 40 billion years. And then I waited even longer and longer and longer. And then, guess what? Eventually, all this rubble wrapped around my giant celestial body. So, I had to create this body for me. It's not as big as mine. At least it's the same gender. The woman would then laugh, as Gekko would then say, Who are you? And she would then say, I am oh, how rude of me. I am Unicronica. Or, as many religions, or as many humans and other beings have called me, by many other names. A race called the Egyptians called me Geb. Another race called the Romans called me Terra. Another civilization called me that went by the Greeks called me Gaia. Another civilization and another one, each and every single time, kept calling me hundreds of different names, making up legends and stories about me. I must say, they are quite imaginative. However, it is, how do I put it, boring. Yes, it's quite boring. Indeed. Don't you know? Lying in this place for such a long time without any company? As Deku would then say, wait a minute, you're the Earth? As she would then say, more or less. I am the core, heart, and lifeblood of this very world that you call Earth. And I'm the most powerful being that you may ever meet. She would then chuckle, as Gekko would then say, whoa. As she would then say, well, I mean, I'll be the second most powerful being you'll ever meet. After all, you are by far plenty stronger than me. She would then tell Deku, as Deku would then go from a look of amazement to a look of confusion, as he'd then say, what do you mean? I'm just a useless freak. I'm quirkless, I shouldn't even have power. But every often or so, these weird things happen, and I'm a freak. Or I'm a monster, I'm a demon, I'm a freak. I'm a mistake, an error, and a glitch in the code of existence. I don't deserve to exist, he would tell El Unicronica, as she would then be silent and still for an entire minute. as she would then chuckle. Not a normal chuckle, this time with a hint of rage and bloodlust backing it up. Slowly, the rage and bloodlust and killing intent would rise and rise until the small chuckle turned into a full-on rumble of laughter as the earth itself would even begin shaking. As the earth itself would be having a global earthquake. As we see her eyes then glow with a purple, demonic flame and a unholy purple lightning. As she would then be glowing this purple demonic aura, hold on, as a purple and demonic and godly aura of power would surround Unicronica entirely, as she would then begin laughing in an uproar of tyranting earthquakes. As she would then grow silent, as she would then be shaking with rage and anger, as she would then say, Who on the entire heap of rock and junk that has culminated over me, over my perfect celestial body over time, dare say that? As she would then say, Who? As her hair would then fly up like Kushina Uzumaki from Naruto's hair. Except this time, not just in random positions, it would be flying all the way up and glowing purple with a demonic and godly aura coming from it. As Deku could feel unholy and all-powerful shockwaves coming right off of her. As he would then say, everyone, all of Japan, and most of Japan, he would say. As she would then say, What is Japan? As he would then explain that Japan is a island / country. It's his home, or what should be his home, or what should have been his home, but instead was his torment and his prison. As she would then say, Well, Izuku, darling, if it makes you any better, I can merely just flick my wrist and the whole of that entire place will be dragged to the bottom of the ocean, or flung out of the atmosphere, she would say, with a yandere smile. As Deku would then say, It's okay. Really? As she would then say, What? You mean after all these humans did? You mean after all the torment and suffering you've been going through, you're not even going to want to destroy them? As he'd then say, What's the point? If we destroy them, that means that, figuratively speaking, they win. By proving that I'm a demon for having that happen. A monster. Beast. A villain. As she would then be shaking again, but would quickly stop. As she would then say, You're right. I understand. As Deku would then say, So, Are you just condemned to stay in this place, or, as she would then say, oh, no, 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 no. In fact, quite the opposite, really. I just preferred to wait here for you for as long as possible, she would say. As she would then say, now, how? You're turning 15. You're turning 15 soon, right? I mean, so, I require something from you, darling. As Deku would then blush this time, as before he did not hear her say darling. As he'd say, what? As she would then say, I merely require you to stay here and train until you are at the age of 16. And then until your body is at the age of 16. Then, of course, we will rise and we will return back to this place called Japan. As Deku would then agree. As we skip to Deku's 15th birthday, he would be growing, as there would be a change in Deku's life. As he would notice his skin, and as he would notice that his skin is becoming less, well, human looking, as it's becoming pale, like that of a vampire from Legends. His eyes and his pupils are becoming more dilated. His eyes are even beginning to change shape and size, as his teeth are becoming sharper by the day. As we skip to Deku's 16th birthday, Deku's skin would have become a pale, pale, pale gray, and would become a pale white. As his teeth would have become like jaws or fangs. He would have grown 2 extra eyes, as his eyes would have changed shape entirely. His eye color would even change from, well, regular green to black with red slits, and to black with red pupils. No, red with black pupils. As Gekko would even have, at this time, 4 arms, which he was able to merge 2 of his arms together into 1 arm to make himself look human. The only disappointing part about that was that it looked like Deku had 10 fingers on each of his hands. Not like on a full palm. No, it looked like almost... Okay, put your 2 hands together, like each finger is touching each other, but have your wrists touch each other instead. And separate your palm, your fingers. Basically, that is what Deku's hands are like. When he merges 2 of his arms together. As Deku would have the ability of the insanely overpowered Oni fire breathing. As he would be able to lift as he would be able to quite literally bench press with his pinky finger an entire moon. as Deku, as Unicronica, of course, would have been able to teleport, and as Deku would have been able to teleport to a much larger world that was about 1,000,000,000 times larger than Earth. There, he would bench press an entire moon with his, 2 moons with his pinky fingers. As Deku would have amassed the ability to create clothing around his body, and even control pyro-related elements such as lava, fire, magma, flame, sun, and solar energy, and others. As with even a lot of concentration and training, Gekko was able to even somewhat manipulate Unicronica's lifeblood, Dark Energon, which in this, it is like a purple, demonic and unholy lava that never goes out and is hot and is infinite times hotter than the hottest thing you could imagine. As Deku would of course grow horns out of his head as well. As he would have created a mask, and as his horns would have been black and would have been white. Well, not exactly white. His horns would have been red. However, Deku created a mask that was red with white horns on it. Now, these white horns are actually hollow horn casings, I guess you'd say. As this is what Deku looks like right now. With his mask on. As at any time, his normal looking clothes can turn into a black, red, white, and silver and gold samurai armor. As for Deku's mask, it could transform into an entire helmet. As Deku would have learned the ability to summon weapons into his hands as well. Combined with God speed. As Deku would have been confirmed to be stronger than Unicronica. As Deku would finally leave. And as Deku and Unicronica would soon leave the heart of the earth. I'm the heart of the core of the earth. As Deku would walk. As we end off with Deku and Unicronica walking towards UA. Deku was smiling, thinking that he would finally overpower those who had wronged him and prove them all wrong. As for Unicronica, while she told Deku that she was there to support him and be a hero alongside him, she told a half-truth and a half-lie at the same time. For yes, she was there to cheer Deku on, but she was also there to kill those who had wronged him. Quietly, covertly, and quickly and cleanly. As the two would enter the gates of UA, as we see Araka looking at Deku, seeing that he looks extremely powerful, as she would walk over to Deku, and of course would try to get all buddy-buddy with him so she could use him for money. However, before she could even open her mouth, Unicronica would look at her with her purple eyes, with even darker purple slits, as she would look directly at her, but not in this form, in a sort of normal human-looking form, with two small gray nubs as the horns, and small gray spikes on her shoulders, along with small gray gauntlets and, well, gray armored pants, and a small gray chest plate. As she would then say, and as she would not even speak to Uraraka, but her eye would then begin moving around, as Uraraka would see what appeared to be a face inside of it, as suddenly the face would turn into a purple vortex, into a purple whirlwind of flames, as Uraraka would basically have been trapped inside of a genjutsu, where she would see all of which Unicronica was planning. To be with Deku alone forever. Now, Unicronica did not just want to be alone with Deku. She wanted them to be the only ones on the earth. As Unicronica's plan and was to pretend to be on Deku's side, to be on the side of heroes, to pretend to be a normal human, a normal mortal, but eventually wipe out all of humanity, as her and Deku would be the only ones left on that world, on the world, where she would be alone with him forever, in peace. As Uraraka would then be snapped out of the genjutsu, and would look as if she saw a fate worse than 1,000 deaths, and worse than dying in every way imaginable. As she then said, "That's impossible," and as she would not even speak, as her brain could not even comprehend what had happened, or what it had seen, as she would then begin mumbling in ancient Sumerian, but backwards, words with a combination of Egyptian and Chinese and even Spanish in there. No one could even understand what she was saying, as she was speaking in unintelligible things that she couldn't even understand. As your Unicronica would just smile and would say, "Well, hello," as she would then say, "Well, darling, we're going to be late for the entrance exam. As Deku would then say, "Ah, right." Now, of course, she was hiding her grand plan from Deku, as she wanted it to be a surprise, as she knew that if she had told him her true intentions, he might flip out and leave her. Or hate her for all of eternity. as Deku, as the reason why I say all of eternity is because Deku is completely immortal. Meaning that, well, she could never forgive herself for all of eternity and would have to live forever with Deku hating her. And she would decided to keep the whole thing secret. As the two would walk in to the UA entrance exams. And that's where I'm ending this part off. Hope y'all enjoyed part 1 of What If Deku was chosen by a goddess. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if I ever have notifications, please punch the crap out of them. I'll see y'all next time. And skadoosh.